The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Great to have you in on a Monday. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you will get to our shout-outs, our starting five in the stream. You are welcome to check out Hail Varsity YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Some thoughts on what we've heard from the scrimmage, what we've heard from Matt Rhule on Saturday, and we'll dive in as Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska Rivals. Some recruiting thoughts and some Husker coverage insight from Tim coming up here in about 15 minutes. In hour two, a Monday with Charlie. Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, joins the show. And then Jay Moore, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, part of our Blackshirt Hour. We'll go back to back as we get ready for week 3 of camp. I know Elijah, another Chasing 3 episode dropped last night. Some pretty good insight there. Already questions in the stream about the closed scrimmage. So we'll have a take or two on that. What have the little birdies been telling us about who's thriving in camp? We'll share all of it. First day of school in a lot of communities today. Do you ever have that little twinge of excitement? It's far different than that first Saturday in fall when Nebraska and the third largest city in the state convene at 10th and Vine. But my guy, Junior, gets back at it for his senior year. He's a rare Schmidt where he's only taking one senior year. And that's to be absolutely appreciated. So we'll have the dreaded back-to-school front step pictures tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be all over the timeline. And from a sentimental factor, I would like to do the kindergarten to now, how it started, how it's ended up. It was just a couple of days ago, it felt like, where he's like, dude, you look creepy. Don't walk me to school. That's a quote from Junior all the way back to kindergarten. So first day of school, what 4 Huskers would you want at your lunch table, Elijah?
Oh, that's I don't know. You put me on the spot there.
Yeah.
What 4 Huskers would I want at my lunch table?
Well, think about it, because either you had a glorious lunchroom session where it was you and your buddies, and I had a good group. It wasn't the Forrest Gump treatment where Forrest gets on the bus and everybody in his county in Alabama said seats taken, except for little Jenny.
Is it all-time Huskers or just current?
Living or dead, I don't care.
Okay, my lunch table.
Who's going to get you kicked out of the lunchroom? Who's gonna protect your food?
Yeah,
who's going to go foraging for food for you?
Give me Indomitian Sue.
Yep, that's my pick.
Richie Incognito.
There might be a stabbing in the chow line.
Jason Peter.
Okay.
I'm just thinking of the meanest Huskers possible and the way in which they played. Richie is also off the field as well.
Feared.
Yeah.
So JP, Richie, Sue. You need one more for that lunch table, assuming it seats 5. If we think back to the Southeast cafeteria.
Leiden Murtha.
Okay.
He looks scary with how he painted his face every single game.
He went program with it.
Do you think he'd just wear that around school?
He could.
It's very possible.
He could. You need some comic relief.
That was a good pull, though, wasn't it, Leiden Murtha? How about that one?
Sure. No, Leiden, yeah.
It's a good pull.
7th-round pick by Detroit, I think. But we'll take your input. We'll ask Uncle Charlie here at 5, the 4 former players he would want to have lunch with.
Can I ask you, though? You mentioned Junior doesn't start till tomorrow. My roommate, middle school teacher, he started today. He needed
Does he keep a bottle in his bottom desk drawer?
He needed a strong pour of whiskey and a cigarette last night. I tell you what, he just got back from a trip to California as well.
Johnny Depp Size poor.
He got back from a trip to California on Friday, and by Sunday night, I was like, buddy, the timing on that one, like, that's got to be rough.
No.
Last day of a vacation to California, and now it's staring down the barrel of a gun with middle school starting on Monday. Oof, tough one. But Junior, how's he spending his last day?
I think he's taking apart a kitchen table because Mama bought a new kitchen table last week because we clearly needed it. We've used the current kitchen table a whopping 2 times. Mm-hmm. So I think they are trying to exile me from the kitchen island for the Saturday morning shows into the spare bedroom that has awful acoustics.
I did a show from in there one time. It wasn't too bad. The one by your front door, kind of?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't awful.
Okay. I did not lock Elijah in the spare room.
Allegedly.
No, I didn't. It does lock, though, because of the German
Well, you didn't
Shepherd.
lock me. You're like, that'd be a good spot to go do it down the front of the hall right there.
Yeah, Elijah, why don't you follow me in here?
There's like one chair in there, and that was it.
Yeah, it's too nice to not use. So there may be swearing and saw work going as we speak. So, yeah, he's helping Mama take a table apart. So Justin is in. Justin, congrats as we get our starting 5 shout-outs on the StreamYard. Hail Varsity YouTube, again, like and subscribe there. Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. The other Dave is in. Jimmy, Uncle Jimmy, good to have you. And Arlo is in. Black Hills Brennan checks in. Mr. Erickson, good to have you. Dylan, you are right, Dylan. Dylan says 1 day closer. Coach Brandon Kool-Aid is in. The Real Matthew says, what's up? Matthew, good to have you. Jack is here. Good afternoon. Cliff from Florida. NASCAR Eric is in. Larry is in, along with A-Dub and the Sexy Grinch, formerly known as Crew. Tuck wants to talk soccer. He says, just kidding. Patrick is here, anonymous. If the Big 8 was reconstituted this year, according to the FPI, projections would be picked. We would be picked to finish 7th above Iowa State.
Don't tell that to the AP voters?
Yeah, we'll get to the AP rankings and non-rankings, but Nebraska, I think, getting 16 votes to be ranked, right around 34th. Brent is in. Eat beef. Happy Monday, eat beef. The other Brian kind of gets us going. Rule of the Day is also in. The other Brian asked the question, afternoon, gents, are we concerned at all about the closed scrimmage? And Matt Rhule addressed it. What were his impressions of the scrimmage? Here's Coach from Saturday, cut 1.
I thought it was a lot cleaner than normally you see a first scrimmage in terms of like a ton of pre-snap penalties and things. There was a couple with maybe the younger guys, but with the older guys, I thought it was pretty clean. We had a couple personal fouls on offense that hurt us. So learning to control our emotions or, control our decision-making is probably something, versus a defense like ours. You get a drive going, you certainly can't go back 15 yards. But I thought it was good spirited work. I always look at scrimmage 1 like it's like a rough draft of a paper. It's number 1. We'll look at it. We'll revise it. But I thought there was a lot of good work there.
Okay, so a positive review. Donald is in. He's just hammered some pizza. He wants cornhead lager. We all would love some cornhead lager right now. Michael is in. KG, Wolfman, Eric. And we'll get some more shout-outs down the road here in the stream. Elijah, let's tackle this question, pun intended, about the closed scrimmage. That means players, coaches, and TO. Those were the eyeballs allowed. And it's pretty simple to me. You're going into week 3. You'll get UTEP and probably some Colorado going here moving forward once school starts. And I have no problem with it. Here's what happens, and I'm not pointing the finger, I'm not blaming, but what happens is a guy who knows a guy who's got a guy on the team. Okay? Mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, older brother, uncle, whatever the case, in some instances. Or maybe it's just another coach that wants to come check out what's going on. So you have coaches, you have former players, you have parents, and you have other friends of Nebraska that show up. And when they show up, they can go, wow, Dylan Raiola is going to win 17 Heismans. Or, what's going on at tight end? Or, left tackle, big worry, no worry. There is 1,000 narratives that can come out of practice based on what has been observed. And there's no blood oath, omerta, sworn to secrecy. You aren't going to scream it with a loudspeaker from the top of the third floor parking garage what you just witnessed because you want to be able to come back. But all that being said, if you're Matt Rhule wants his team to lock down, focus, and just keep working. Keep getting better. Take the good, take the bad, take the ugly, and get better. That's absolutely boring. That's coach speak from me, and I'm trying not to be a coach because I'm not even qualified to walk in those shoes. But you shut it down, you can just do you. And that's all it means to me. And whether it comes with the accelerated hype train or the fear and worry at left tackle, just as an example, or X, Y, Z, what happened, what was good, what was bad, what needs work, what did Rhule say? Couple of penalties, control emotions. We'll hear the fire comment here from Rhule in just a moment about how do guys react when they have disappointment, when they really haven't faced a lot of disappointment prior to getting to college on the football field. You're going to have that, and how do you respond to it? He's talked about that a lot in the offseason. But Elijah, you shut practice down for just those that need to keep practicing. It's going to keep things on an even keel, and it'll prevent some manageable worry versus what's the buzz coming out of that first scrimmage. Good idea by Matt Rhule.
Yeah, it's good or bad. Is it going to help the team, I think, is the question Matt Rhule is going to ask himself.
Thank you.
Is it going to help the team?
Does this help us win?
Does it help people like you and me, Schmitty, to have people at practice? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Helps us. Whenever you get the little tidbits, the little crumbles coming out of...
You have some crumbles you can share, at least so far so good through fall camp.
Yeah. I could share.
Yeah.
Or I could not. Does it help the team,
Elijah's
Schmitty?
been to practice.
Does it help the team, Schmitty? No, but but it's as simple as that. And I think the timing of it was interesting given what we saw in yesterday's Chasing 3 episode where Matt Rhule gets up there and says, you guys are changing how you play whenever there's fans here. That's why we're losers. I'm paraphrasing here, but
that's total.
It's because whenever there's fans in the stands, you guys are getting away from your fundamentals. You guys are...
You changing
how you play, and you guys aren't playing up to your level, up to your standard that we've come to expect from you. So I think the timing of that, given that it was a closed scrimmage, as people asking questions of, man, are there concerns? I think it's calculated from Rhule. The fact that there's no hype coming out right now. Because people are saying, man, should we be worried about the fact that they closed up the scrimmage as opposed to the other side of the coin, which is, man, should we be encouraged because Matt Rhule doesn't want hype getting out there about this team right now because Dylan Raiola did this at practice. Jamari Butler did this at practice. Tommy Hill did this, punting, whatever it is, kicking game.
Gunner's looking money at left tackle.
All these things that could be coming out from scrimmage, and instead, it's not. It's quiet. It's all quiet in the Western Front.
Thank you. Great movie.
But better book.
If someone gives you boots, just kindly say no thank you. Brian checks in on the stream. Rhule's trying to get his players dialed in and play to a standard. This is a huge opportunity for the Big Red to turn the corner this year, and Rhule doesn't want that to go to waste. You've got an enormous, rare opportunity to write that award-winning movie script this season.
And I love this comment here from Brian because it's are you playing to the standard of what some people at practice are going to go to their buddies in the media or go on Twitter and say, are you playing to the standard of the program?
The guy across from you, the guy next to you, the guy behind you.
Are you going to be happy with your practice because such and such former player hopped on Twitter and said, man, this guy had a great day, or texted his buddy in
ex-media member, current media member.
Whatever it may be. Or are you going to be happy with your day at practice because you locked in at film and you look at the standard and the coaching staff, the standard that they've emphasized, you've lived up to that standard? It's kind of the question for me with an open practice on Saturday, or with the closed practice on Saturday, closed scrimmage. I like that comment from Brian. I think he nails it.
Nope, he absolutely did. You have Wolfman 010 moving past that closed session and just throwing it out there. Could see Nebraska inside the top 20 by week 7. All good. We'll see. Pretty big opportunity in front of them. 10 starters back on offense, 9 on defense. Generational talent at quarterback. Manageable schedule. You were right there at 5-7 a year ago. You just lay out A, B, C, D, E as to what could work. Let's hear a little bit here from Rhule, if we can sneak it in with the turnovers. Cut 6, I believe.
We are not going to have time.
We'll get it in. We'll get in this hour. We'll spend some time with Coach McBride. You got a question for Charlie? Fire that off here as well. Chris at hailvarsity.com. Hail Varsity YouTube, like and subscribe there. And Twitter. Always watch the show on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Give Elijah a follow at Herbal Essence at Schmidt_radio for me, Chris Schmidt. And plenty on the recruiting front. Christian Jones, his timeline. Mosey's flip. And the other chase for 2025. A week from this past weekend. Mr. David Sanders Jr.'s commitment weekend is ahead.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Monday edition. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Can stream this show, the video portion. Hail Varsity YouTube channel, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the podcast. Tim Verghese with us inside Nebraska from Rivals. Quick shout out to DCK. Says, Chris, you look younger. Not kidding. Haven't been here since last season. Well, DCK, thank you for popping on in. Do I look younger today, Elijah? You still look old and crusty, is what Elijah's thought bubble is saying.
I'm staying away.
You're moving
from this
away.
one.
You're moving on. Tim, good to have
I didn't
you.
know you had a brother.
Oh, wow. Sign this guy up. It's all Tim Radio.
Tim knows how to hit on middle-aged women.
Man, it's Tim Verghese on Twitter. Elijah, what the hell?
It's a classic. It's a classic. I didn't know you had a sister, and it's clearly their daughter.
Oh, man. Wow. Let's talk recruiting. Let's hit some recruiting. Let's hit some fall camp. The topic du jour, Tim, before we get into to recruiting, is the closed practice. So, reaction, Nebraska fans are like, well, what's going on? A closed practice? We just kind of laid out good on Rhule, trying to keep a narrative under control is the best way to put it before you get into 1,000 miles per hour downhill on ice with this football season.
Yeah, I saw some discussion about it, and that kind of surprised me. I know it's I guess new around here, but this isn't all that new in other programs, this is something that goes on. I don't think this is an indication of anything. I saw people immediately jumping to the conclusion of, oh, this team isn't ready for the spotlight on them, or they aren't ready for eyes on them or whatever. I saw some talk about that. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's truly is, like you said, I think just trying to control the narrative a little bit, positive and negative, and just kind of, because again, and again, a peek behind the curtain here, just in terms of those little practice nuggets you guys get or the fans get when media isn't there. It's because of other people that are in attendance at those practices. Notice this weekend there was none of those real nuggets from really anybody because it was closed. And again, this is going back to Baylor, even Temple. This is the way Rhule likes to operate. If he can, he'd like as little media access as possible. He has to do a certain amount here, but for the most part, it's limited in terms of access, and that's just, it's a program choice, and it's not a positive or a negative necessarily. It's just the way the coach likes to run things.
Tim, do you have a secret spot on campus, a good vantage point over a practice field that maybe Schmidt or I could use this upcoming Saturday?
3rd floor.
Old Father?
I'm never stepping foot in Old Father ever again.
Why is that?
Why? Because I got to go take the same class 3 different times at Old Father. You're right. It was math.
Of course it was. We're broadcasters.
But back to you, Tim. Where do you hide?
Oh man, I need to scout. I think this season's about scouting locations and figuring out, as I spend a little more time back on campus, figuring out kind of what makes sense. I know there is a spot. I believe it's at OU in Texas. I believe there is 2 spots on their campus where you can kind of, if you can park out and kind of view their practice field, but I haven't found that for Nebraska just yet.
Top floor, Morrill Hall, is there any view you could get up there? I'm trying to think here. There's got to be something.
You got to dress as a ref. Bottom line. Isaiah Mosey, Oregon to Nebraska, not new news, but 3 days ago, I know you broke this out, Tim, with some reaction, and we were waiting on to see if the flip was going to happen. It did. What do you like about Mosey's game?
Yeah, I love, I think, just his playmaking ability. This is a guy, and I talked about it again on our podcast today with John Garcia, our Rivals national analyst, and he kind of echoed a lot of the same sentiments I had of just like, this is a guy with really good elusiveness, really good body control, like kind of turns into a running back after the catch, which is unique for a slider framed receiver. Like this is a 6'6" receiver, about 180 pounds. Like, and he's slim, he's slim. Like, he's still going to keep adding some weight, but got a really powerful core and lower body, can run through some arm tackles. He's fun. Like this is the guy, like I guess the best way to put it is, in an offense, this is the guy you get your like bubble screens out to, and your little screens or your little hitch routes and your slants. Like you feed him the ball in unique, creative ways, your jet sweeps. Like you feed him the ball in creative ways, and you find ways to get the ball in his hands, where once he's got the ball in his hands, he can find ways to do things and kind of create a little bit for you. Someone on our board was like, he's kind of like Wandale. I was like, he's a good 3-4 inches taller than Wandale, but in terms of usage, very similar, just in terms of, I think, how many different roles he would play hypothetically in the offense.
And that's what I was going to go for, is does he feel like what Wandale Robinson was wanted from Husker fans, what Husker fans wanted to see out of Wandale?
Yeah, this is very similar. And even if you go back and they tried to use Wandale a bit in the backfield, which is something he hadn't really done. But you go back and look at Isaiah's junior film, there's a couple of clips of him in the backfield itself, and he's like kind of a natural. He's got some good ball carrier vision, and again, has just a better frame to potentially run between the tackles. Like this is a guy that I think he's going to arrive on campus probably 175, 180. He can get up to 200, 210 by the time his freshman season starts.
Fair to say also, Tim, with the recruitment of Michael Terry still ongoing, that Nebraska would see a similar role from Michael Terry within their offense?
Somewhat. I think Michael's more of even more diverse, just in the sense that I think you can get Michael outside. I think you can get Michael kind of all over the place. When you look at this offense, and they're already doing it on defense, but you look at this offense and the pieces that are coming together, there's been a lot of confusion about like, what is Carter Nelson's role? Like he was always going to play this specific role, like this wide receiver tight end kind of hybrid. Just because the title has changed doesn't mean anything changed over the summer in terms of what the staff envisions for him. All it is he's formally, quote unquote, a receiver now. Pretty much the way he's used, the way Jandron Bonner is going to be used, the way I'm trying to think if there's anyone else in this offense, but with specifically those two, I think the way those two are used is how you're going to see Michael Terry used, while like Mosey's more in line with kind of what you saw from I'm trying to even think if there's a good comp here, like what you saw from Billy Kemp a little bit last year. Kind of more of a, but I'm curious to see kind of how the pieces fit in. But all in all, what I'm trying to say is I think you're starting to see the vision come together of this positionless offense with all these like diverse, unique bodies that can line up all over the place.
Tim Verghese with us, Rivals.com, InsideNebraska.com, at Tim Verghese on Twitter. So, Tim, let's spend a minute on just this Nebraska team and the offense with Sat and Dylan or whoever pulling the trigger and all of these weapons. You've heard Rhule and the staff talk about a positionless offense, but let's talk about what that upside looks like. You can want to be positionless, but if it works and you can mismatch, I mean, how many potential mismatches does Nebraska present on the field possibly?
I mean, this year, I'm curious to see this year specifically. I think down the line, I think you're going to start to see it come up. Oh, this year, I think you get some size mismatches with Malachi, with Isaiah Neyor, with Jamal Banks. You get a little bit of size mismatches on the outside. You get a little bit of that power, and something I noticed at open practice on Friday, and I wrote it up in my notes. I think his role is going to increase as the season goes on. It's hard for corners to stay in front of Carter Nelson. He's just so big, strong, and explosive that he's kind of just running through guys kind of right now, where it's proving really difficult for these corners to just stay in front. Like, they're either getting blown past him, they're on the ground. Like, it's just tough. And I think that's a unique mismatch on the inside. You can expose. I think the ultimate goal is to create mismatches at every single position. Like, you want every receiver position to be a mismatch. You want your tight ends to be athletic enough where they're a mismatch for the linebacker or the safety that they're on, but they're also bigger than the linebackers and safeties they're on. On the inside, you want your receivers to be fast enough that the corners can't really keep up. You want the combination of size and speed pretty much at every single position. This year, I think Nebraska's got a couple opportunities, because even beyond the Banks and Neyor, and like Malachi is going to be probably in that second or third unit with second or third rotation at receiver. Mm-hmm. Jalen Lloyd's a speed mismatch. Like, I think Travis Hunter and like a handful of other DBs they're going to face this year are fast enough to keep up with Jalen downfield. There aren't that many. So you got a bit of a speed mismatch there. I think Bonner presents a little bit of a mismatch just in the sense of that combination of elusiveness and mass. Like, he is a thicker frame, someone that's hard for like a slot corner to bring down in a one-on-one situation. And that's where he's going to primarily be lining up. Same thing goes for Fedoni and Carter Nelson. So you're like 5-6 deep where you can create some individual mismatches. I think the ultimate goal is you don't, like, right now I think they have like individual roles, you know what I mean, that can create mismatches. I think ultimately the goal is you want to be 3-4 where like we can plug any of these receivers at any of these spots and all of them can be a mismatch wherever they are. I think that's the ultimate goal with this offense.
It's Tim Verghese with us here, and Tim, we might have to keep you for a couple minutes on the other side to get an update on David Sanders Jr. His commitments obviously come in this Saturday. Feels like Tennessee's in the driver's seat. Want to get your feel on that here in just a minute. But I want to get your thoughts with this balance. I feel like I personally see more mismatches with the wide receivers and the pass catchers than I do with Nebraska's rushing attack, given the fact that it's going to have to be a running back first rushing attack. I'm not sure you have any, I shouldn't say dynamic athletes because they're all dynamic athletes to be playing Division I football, but any guys in that room that stand out as being potential all Big Ten players. And I feel like I see a couple of those guys in the wide receiver room. What's your take on the running back room being able to provide mismatches? What do you see there?
That one's tough. I think that's tough just because they all offer so many different things, and we've seen it feels like so little, but also so much from these guys. Ramir's been here forever. Like Gabe Irvin, it feels like we've seen a lot out of him, but also at the same time, it feels like there's still more that can be tapped into. You've got I think Dante in terms of just boom bust, or like not boom bust, but just like in terms of the highest upside in creating some of those mismatches. I think Dowdle's combination of size and top end speed is that, like, he's a guy that, you hammer through the middle, he breaks a tackle or two, all of a sudden no one's able to keep up. Like, you can't really say that for others there. Like Irvin's, doesn't have the same top end gear. Ramir doesn't necessarily have the same ability to run through tackles. So Emmett's a guy that I think is a good mix of that as well, but Emmett's smaller than Dante is. And I think Dante gives you a little something, as a pass catcher as well. So I think Dante's the guy down the line that I think you could create some mismatches with, but I think Emmett's the best combination of those top quote unquote top three backs they have right now, with Dowdle as like the newcomer still kind of figuring things out.
Tim Verghese, some overtime with Tim. At Tim Verghese on Twitter. Follow him there, and Rivals.com. Inside Nebraska. More with Tim on the way.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Overtime continues here with Tim Verghese inside Nebraska. Rivals.com. At Tim Verghese can find the show Hail Varsity YouTube watch stream. That way, the video portion along the Hail Varsity Radio Network, can hear it on different spots around the state. And, the podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play with Hail Varsity Radio. Tim, with recruiting on that front, I'm going to go to Carter Nelson. It's the Christian Jones, Christian Jones question of the week. And let's talk about his vicinity with Oklahoma right now in this recruiting race, Nebraska and other suitors for him. I know that Jones is a big-time want for the Big Red. Yeah.
I think we're starting to get a little clearer picture of at least something of a timeline here. Again, I think this is a recruitment that could continue to get pushed back if he needs more time. And I think as where things stand right now would be, I think Nebraska's got a slight edge, but Oklahoma's right there. And as I said, after coming out of June, Oklahoma made a really big impression on that official visit. And, for Oklahoma, he's their one remaining linebacker target on the board. For Nebraska, he's the sole remaining linebacker target on the board as well. So both schools have a spot for him. They'll have a spot for him down the stretch of this. Oklahoma, obviously, I think would pivot if they feel this isn't going their way or this carries into the fall a little bit. But sounds like he's aiming to make something closer to the end of September, maybe even early October. But I think a finish line is at least in sight right now. And I had this discussion last week, but I think it's all the more important for him and for a couple 25 targets they're still looking to. Michael Terry's now considering pushing his recruitment into the fall. I think it's really important you start the season off strong. I think you really need, obviously, to just win the games you're supposed to win, but also that Week 2 Colorado game, as important as it is, becomes all the more important, the closer we get to it, with the list of visitors, starting to pile up that are coming in for that weekend. With some of these recruitments now, seemingly that weekend's becoming so pivotal because it's going to be Nebraska on a national stage, an opportunity to kind of prove themselves at home and kind of show that this thing's headed in the right direction. And so I think that game's becoming all the more important for the recruitment of Christian Jones, for the recruitment of Michael Terry, if a decision isn't made by that point. And for the rest of this 25 class, I think it's important to show who you have, what you have, and, have a strong September, carry that into a strong October. I think that's critical for this 25 class right now.
Tim, last thought here before we switch gears and talk David Sanders Jr. Where does Nebraska pivot after Will Hawthorne?
I'm not sure. I think for them, I think it's a little bit of recalibrating the board a little bit, kind of maybe circling back on some guys. I'll say this much. Dawson Merritt is at least publicly stating he's pretty shut down, but he did note that he's at least communicating with some schools he's got, or at least coaches he's got relationships with. Dating back to when that recruitment was open, Nebraska was one of those schools that had real good relationships with him. So again, I expect Nebraska to keep working there, keep trying to chip away if they can, but he's pretty locked in with Alabama right now, and it's going to take a lot to try and flip him away there. I think you're going to see Rob Dvorak make some new offers. And I wrote it up last week, and I'll say this again just because it became a similar thing at Texas A&M when Texas A&M missed out on Harold Perkins and then Anthony Hill in back-to-back cycles, where the blame immediately went to the linebackers coach for not being able to close. This isn't a case of that. Even at A&M, it wasn't a case of the linebackers coach not being able to close. The linebackers coach did everything possible in that recruitment to win. The position coach can only do so much in recruitments that are so, in this day and age where there's so many other factors involved. And, there's NIL here, there's resources, there's just things that a position coach can't really contend with. They have to do the best job building the relationship. Rob Dvorak has done a really good job building some relationships, and he's the reason Nebraska made up so much ground in Dawson Merritt's recruitment as quick as they did, despite not having the on-field success. It's the reason why, despite the coaching change and everything, Christian Jones has remained so high on Nebraska. Why Will Hawthorne, when they entered that recruitment, they were able to jump so many schools and really were able, they were in a real fight to pull a kid from Ames, Iowa away from Ames, Iowa. It's because of Rob Dvoracek. So I think he deserves some credit for the relationships he's building. And none of the blame on some of these lost recruitments over these last few months doesn't go on him. It's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. How he responds is up to him. How he, grows his board, or, who he circles back on. Now this is on him to kind of figure out that board, because ultimately at the end of the cycle, it is on him and how he shapes that room. But in the meantime, you can't blame any of the losses on him so far.
Tim, a thought as this weekend looms for Nebraska and David Sanders Jr.
Still hearing Tennessee, still think Tennessee is going to be the pick. I don't think a decision, at least from what I've been able to gather so far, I don't think a true decision has been made just yet. I still think, and this is that type of recruitment where, anything could happen between now and Saturday. But as things currently stand, it is very much still trending Tennessee.
Do you see it being a commitment date being moved back because he's stalled on the recruitment date? You talk about it like a decision has not been made. Do you think it's going to be made by Saturday? Do you think he just puts a name out there on Saturday and the recruitment continues? What do you mean by that?
I think he has an idea of this top 4, I think it's pretty much down to 2, maybe 3 right now. And I think he has a strong feeling. Him and his family have a strong feeling about 1. I think we can all guess what that is. But he has a very strong feeling about 1. But the other 2 are still lurking there, and I don't think a final decision was made. I do think he's going to stick with this commitment date and make a decision now. And I've kind of held it throughout the summer, and especially after that last July visit. I think Nebraska is well positioned to continue communication and with a strong fall, with maintained dialogue, with showing some development. Bryce Bernhardt has a good year and, finds himself drafted, or, you're able to replace Teddy and not really miss a beat, or you show development on the O-line this fall. I think Nebraska's now positioned themselves to they could really make a push in late October or November if they end up losing out on Saturday. They could make a push late in the season to try and flip him, and I think David would be receptive at least to Nebraska if they take care of business on the field. But I think they've positioned themselves in a place where it's viable for them to try and push for a flip down the stretch. I don't think they'd be wasting time trying to push for a flip if they don't land him on Saturday.
It's Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Rivals.com is where you find him. Of course, log on Inside Nebraska and follow at Tim Verghese on Twitter. Tim, awesome. We again snagged you for 2 segments. Check is in the mail. Thank you much for some overtime with us. Always love your insight, and we'll get locked in again on next Monday and get ready for camp. Appreciate you as always, man.
Yes, sir. Sounds good. We'll see y'all next time.
There he is. Thanks, Tim Verghese with us. Inside Nebraska, Rivals.com at Tim Verghese. Good to have him. We'll wind down this first hour. Blackshirt Hour is on the doorstep here. Charlie McBride, Jay Moore. We'll get back into the stream. More of your comments and thoughts. It's good to be with you this Monday. It's Hail Varsity, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Is good stuff from Tim Verghese. The full 2 segments. Check that out on the podcast. Spotify, iTunes, Google Play for the audio. Get the video posted on the Hail Varsity YouTube channel live right now, and we'll get it propped up for you a little bit after 6:30 tonight. Elijah rock and roll with that. 489-1240, 489-1240 to get in. Time permitting, we'll squeeze in some more Matt Rhule. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. And interesting about turnovers. Elijah, with what Rhule was asked about on Saturday, and so far so good or not when it comes to the turnover bug. How are things looking? How did they look in the scrimmage?
You have a cut number here?
6.
6? Oh, duh.
There was a couple turnovers in areas that I would not like to see them, but I thought other than that, the ball was moved, the passes were thrown and caught. I was happy with it. it's not the level it's going to be. I think the biggest thing I'm looking for from the quarterbacks is just honestly the difference is who between the great ones and the average ones, in my opinion, just my humble opinion, is what things look like when things are going wrong. Like who they are when things are going wrong. And if you're a true freshman quarterback, if you're Danny or Dylan, or you haven't had a lot of things go wrong yet. You know what I mean? And so trying to give them exposure, trying to expose them, to strenuous situations to see how they respond. And they're doing a good job responding to it, But it's gonna be a fire out there when you're the quarterback, right? Heinrich's used to the fire, and he's felt the fire, right? So can you handle the fire? And I don't mean to preach up here, but that's the whole key to young people becoming men or women. It's like you get out in the real world, you start to go through fire, you start to go through adversity. So our ability to handle adversity and play that to me is the biggest thing right now. No one where to go with the ball. Our guys are good at what it takes. We'll play right through them, but it's just the other pieces.
Pretty telling, and that's part of that learning curve, that growth, that experience factor. It is going to get messy. It's going to get messy on 3rd and long. It's going to get messy in Iowa City and Columbus. It's going to get messy Saturday night against the Buffs. There'll be moments like that. How do you handle those high-pressure moments, and how do you respond if it didn't go so well the first time?
And this goes back to closing the scrimmage on Saturday, because if there are messy moments from the offense, let's say Dylan Raiola throws an interception. Is that bad because the offense turns the football over and that's been a problem for years, or is that good because what we've been saying all offseason long is the defense, the one thing they need to improve upon is generating more takeaways? Is that a positive because, the defense generated a takeaway at practice, or is that a negative because, the offense turned it over again? It's one thing you don't have to deal with whenever there's not people there from both a player and a coach standpoint, is how people respond to practice moments like that, where you are playing a high-level defense. You're playing a defense that's been emphasizing this summer, we need to get more takeaways. If they're taking the ball away at practice, is that a good thing for the defense? Is that a bad thing for the offense?
It's a good thing for the defense because what they are emphasizing they need to get good at, and that's takeaways. But you're emphasizing it paramount on offense. So while you can learn from it in a practice setting, you don't have to live with it. It's a mentality, quite honestly, defensively. That's the good part.
This is Christian Peter. I'm sorry, but the stories I have about Charlie are not appropriate for the public.
The right case of the Mondays. It's Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride, on Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and can find the show on YouTube right now, live and watch. Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter, or along the Hail Varsity Radio Network. And it's that time again, a Monday with Charlie, Mr. Blackshirt, Coach Charlie McBride. Coach, 19 days till kickoff. Nebraska's getting ready. Are you ready?
That's my Christmas.
I bet it is. It's Christmas, New Year, birthday, all rolled into one. I know you're fired up, and I want to jump into Nebraska's video. It's called Chasing 3. I know you're familiar with it. You've heard of it. It's a weekly drop, or about a weekly drop. It's an episode, a look behind the scenes with the Nebraska football team, and they had a moment where Rhule, during the open Saturday practice with the fans, kind of lost it on the team. He lost it on the older guys, and was pretty direct as to why Nebraska's been losing. And they change what they've been doing well when there are all of a sudden eyes on them. And Rhule called it out. The end result perhaps was a closed scrimmage Saturday where nobody except your buddy T.O. was allowed in to see. That's parents, that's former players, that's friends of the program, all that stuff. So what do you make of that? What do you think of that with Coach Rhule getting after the older guys about, hey, you guys change your process when all of a sudden people start watching?
Yeah, well, when you let press and people and everybody in kind of, whenever, and all of a sudden you slam the door shut. I don't remember us exactly doing that. I remember going inside, and because normally our practices, if I remember, we had students walking through the stadium while we were practicing during the season. But it may be that they're getting prepared for, for the season with some things. And it would be the general things that probably will not change. But when you get the blitzes and you get the things on defense and different plays and trick plays or stuff like that, I remember we played down at the Cotton Bowl one year, and we let the press in a little bit, and they wrote it in the newspaper what our trick plays were. And so the next morning we got up, and there they were in the paper, all the stuff we were doing. And I don't think that didn't bother Tom that much, but it did hurt us in the game a little bit, I think, and so forth. So that is, to me, is not really unusual, although it, with this amount of time left with that, what is it, 2 weeks at least, you got, and have it kind of shut out is, fairly interesting. I don't remember ever telling the kids, that they had to do anything. I think we had somebody come in from the sports information and explain how they should talk to the press.
The question I'm interested here is with Nebraska, a team that's not won in a lot of years, changing in the moment, right? All of a sudden they've got folks watching them, so they become a different character almost.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I mean, they've let everybody come in and do the things that they've kind of wanted to do, and now they haven't done it. The only thing I would say about that is that it ought to be a warning at the beginning of the year. I would guess that, in my feelings, that the last 2 weeks or the last 3 weeks or whatever their case is, that we pretty much lock things down. Up until that point, we're wide open, or whatever your terminology is for it. But it's not something that I think is unusual for teams to do that. A lot of teams will, close their scrimmages down for sure. Now, I think we've had some. I think in the past we have had some closed practices, but I don't remember that it was it was anything that was, lasting. In other words, it was kind of on the short side of it. But I think toward the beginning of the year, people are interested in the quarterback, and the one thing you don't want is some papers or press or anything back and forth. Well, this guy should be the guy, and this guy shouldn't be the guy, and this and that. And I think they're trying to avoid a little bit of that. And the quarterback situation, maybe. I don't know what his plans are to announce and any of that. I heard him say several times that they're going to go on a two quarterback deal, and situation, which kind of made some sense to me. I think people have done that. I know that Penn State tried to do it against us in the kickoff classic. It didn't work too good. They weren't as far along, I don't think, with their quarterbacks as probably we were and we are now. And so but it's not, to me, it's not an unusual thing. Maybe a little soon, but it's not something that I can't see. I know we didn't do it until a little later, and I think we kind of closed up a little bit The stadium, we locked the gates, I know, so the students couldn't go through, and stuff like that. I know we did close that part of it. But then we did have it where the press at one time could only go during warm-ups, and then they had to leave. And so, there's those times that come up, and there's usually a reason for it. I guess as assistant coaches, we didn't pay a whole lot of attention, to that to them closing up. And I think we talk to the press after practice and stuff like that, I think, on a regular basis. So, we just didn't make any announcements as to what we were doing. I mean, it was more about player situations.
So basically, you closed down practice to allow the team to control the narrative and to keep idiots like Schmidt and myself from riling up the fans over nothing.
We're not.
Yeah, I don't know what, each coach is different about how they do things, and I don't know that I know some practices. I know when Pelini was here, we couldn't even go to practice, and ex-players, and we couldn't even go in. We weren't invited, period.
Why is that?
I don't know. That's just the way his philosophy was, and I think a lot of it had to do with the pro football, because a lot of times pro football is people really, take an eyeball on them, and you'll know when they close, they'll do the same thing. The NFL, they'll shut it down near the season. They'll do a few things during, pregame stuff like that. But I think they shut it down pretty tight when it gets close to the season and they start playing games and things.
Charlie McBride's with us, Hail Varsity Radio on Monday with Charlie. Sorry, Coach, didn't mean to step on you there. Want to ask about just the difficulty for freshmen to not only contribute, but to see quite a bit of time at the linebacker spot. How tough is that?
Well, it all depends on kind of what you're doing and how fast kids can learn. It all depends on them. It's not whether you say at the beginning we're going to play so and so. You have to wait and see his progress. And if the progress is such that it may be that one guy's better on air, and maybe in passing downs you're going to put somebody in the game different. Mm-hmm. It's all a personnel thing. It really ends up being that. A lot of decisions are made by personnel, and if you have somebody that does something special at certain times, or is good at the running game, or is good at the passing game, or whatever the case is, you pretty much start him out in those situations. If you think that's the way it's going to be. But, for me to say that this is what they're going to do because of it, it all goes back to the meeting room, and where the coach, or the assistant coaches, position coaches get involved, and the head coach, about what can this guy do and can't do. And do you trust him, and do you not, and things like that. And with the scrimmage like they're having now would be a telltale as to whether some of that stuff's going to happen.
It's Charlie McBride with us here. And Charlie, as we kind of await some position battle results, hear who the starter is going to be against UTEP, what's the benefit to waiting up until the first game to announce some of these? What's the benefit to announcing it early in fall camp when you know? And I guess as a follow-up to that, when do you know who your guy is going to be? Does it typically right before the first game? When is that?
We had a thing. I don't think we announced exactly who our starting lineups were going to be until probably a week or so before. I mean, I'm guessing it's been a while, and But I know that we didn't make any announcement of exactly who was going to be the starters at the different positions until maybe the depth chart came out, and that was maybe the week of the game. Who the quarterback was going to be and who the linebackers were going to be in secondary and corners and things like that. So, those are the defensive linemen and the offensive linemen. People, you're looking at too deep. That's what I'm. I would say that if somebody showed me too deep, I wouldn't. I would assume that they're all going to play. And in my case, with the defensive linemen, there were times when we, without even me saying anything, I just said we're going to alternate every 2 series. And that's just to keep them fresh. That was the main thinking of it, because I trusted all 6 of the guys that I had. And, 3 on the first team and 3 on the second usually, and sometimes maybe 4, but in short yardage. But it was, everybody knew, who that was in the press and in the, in public. So, but it's the quarterbacks, the receivers, the running backs that they don't know for sure. Mm. And everybody wants to know, right? Who is it? And, you'd be surprised, like the other day I see in the paper, where one kid's really come on and another kid's really come on. And so that threw a wrench into everything that maybe had been going on so far. So there still may be some decisions maybe made at your 3 deep, say, at your running back position, to start with. And same thing with receivers. You're liable to have one receiver that was the 4th team come out and run a couple of plays and catch 2 touchdown passes, and all of a sudden you say, hey, what are we doing? But it's usually the case is the meaningful people on offense, the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the wideouts are the important guys that you want to know. And a lot of times it's in the secondary that people want to know, and especially a lot of times we had at defensive end, we had some talk, and we had guys that could play, and they did, and that's the way it worked out. I mean, it worked out so that everybody played. I know that at one time I talked to one of the players when Pelini was there, I think, and if I remember, he called me and said that he had been moved to second team. I said, well, just relax. Well, when the season was over, he had like 30 more snaps than the guy that started. So, so that's what happens. And so who knows, and how what their thinking is. And that I would guess that you can look at a little bit of what's happened in the pro game, because that can change a lot of your thinking. You're a little tighter in the pro game than you are maybe in college. But if you've just your last year was in pro ball, those are the things that stick with you the most.
Charlie McBride with us. Coach, we'll holler next Monday. Always love talking some football with you as we get closer to the season. And thanks so much for giving us a few minutes today.
Well, thank you for having me. And I'll take care of yourselves and just kind of relax until the ball's snapped.
We'll do that. We'll get ready to go. We'll get ready to go. Sound advice. I love it.
Okay. Thanks for having me, guys. I'll talk to you next week.
All right, Coach.
Okay. Bye now.
There he is, Mr. Blackshirt, Charlie McBride. Jay Moore with us on the way.
All-State, 2-year starter, and rush in for the Big Red and NFL vet.
Is Dudeness or Duder or, El Duderino if you're not into the whole brevity thing.
It's Blackshirt Jay Moore with Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, part of our Blackshirt Hour. Jay Moore, Big Red wrap-up. Find and follow on Twitter at JMoore44. Countdown continues, Jay Bird, 19 days. More exciting, that first practice or that first day of school?
First practice, for sure. That's, training camp is that necessary evil you always have to go through, whether in high school or college or NFL. It's that grind. You have to go through it. But once you kind of get to school, once school starts, things kind of slow down a little bit. You get in there more of the routine of the season, game planning. Your process changes a little bit. You just get focused on winning as many football games as you can. Right now, whether high school, I think high school practice just started today. Nebraska's in their second week. Still got a couple more weeks before the season starts. You start getting that game plan right. But that's a nice, refreshing thing to get to that point where you make it through a training camp as healthy as possible, and you finally start preparing for another team that's in a different uniform. Because right now, you get tired. You can only go against the same guys so much. In the NFL, they used to have 4. Now it's three preseason games. So you at least get to do something different, travel some places, play against teams in other jerseys. Obviously, they have they scrimmage teams during camp as well. So, but in college, it gets a little stale. You get a lot of fights break out. You're just tired of going with the same guys. But once school is around the corner, that's when it's go time and the season's about ready to start.
Jay, who's the guy that you were always the most sick and tired of going up against in fall camp?
Well, any offensive lineman, tight end, that's the guys I played against. It was, Matt Slauson, Chris Patrick. I'm just thinking of the guys I played, Seppo Avarier, Mike Erickson, any offensive lineman, right? You just go against them so many times. It doesn't matter if they're guards, tackle, centers, because you're doing one-on-one pass rush and obviously 2-on-2 games with guards and tackles as well. So even, the tight ends back in the day of Josh Mueller, Matt Harrion, you just, loved all those guys, right? I mean, appreciate them as teammates, but it's just you get tired of going against them. You still go against them all the time during the season as well. You still do good on good during the season, but it's just one of those things you just do, and you get used to it, and you just try to one-up them every day, man, because they'll get you every now and then. You just try to get them more than they got you. You just always are trying to one-up each other every day, which is good. That's healthy competition.
Jay Moore's with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Jay, I want to talk a little bit about Saturday's scrimmage. It was closed to parents, closed to everybody but the players, the coaches, and some legend named T.O. What's your thought on that? And you look at the focus aspect. You're going into week 3 now, like you mentioned, but that first scrimmage, really trying to kind of keep it closed down, control that conversation, that narrative that may leak out of practice if folks get a set of eyes on it.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think it's also you just want to control the situation as greatly as possible. I think media has plenty of access, but again, you just don't want things getting out of control. You don't want to get the cart before the horse. The Raiola hype is already going. There's a lot of excitement, I think, going on right now. There's a lot of it. We discussed last week. There's multiple factors why people are very excited and have high expectations for this football team in 2024, but we haven't played a game yet, and it's all what maybe Rhule's done at different places in the past, what players we have coming back, all sorts of outside factors. But again, this team is still hasn't learned to win yet. This team has still had turnover issues. This team has some penalty issues at key moments. So I think controlling the narrative is very, very important. And I'm more excited than I have been in the past for this upcoming season. I think the product's going to be much improved, but there's a lot of time left, and there's no reason to have an open scrimmage. And if something good happens, all of a sudden it's college football or playoff or bust, whatever it is. So there's no reason to you don't want to get too far over the skis yet. I mean, there's a lot of time left for this first game, and you're dealing with some young men still. So you got to kind of control them and control the expectations of those guys. But I mean, we had close scrimmages. You want that. You just want to be able to go in there, get your business done. You don't want to. It's nice to go in there and not have to deal with. It's just a necessary evil, right? Dealing with the media, answering questions on certain things. But they're in a. You want to call it like a foxhole right now, right? They're getting ready, so you just want to control everything and just hunker down and get focused as much as possible on UTEP and being better than you were last year.
So, Jay, you think it's kind of hype management closing down this scrimmage? Because we also had the comment from Rhule last night in the Chasing 3 episode that was released where they were practicing inside the stadium, and Matt Rhule talked about the fact that the team was changing how they were playing. They weren't playing their fundamentals as soon as fans were in the stands, and he says, this is the reason why we lose. It's because you guys, as soon as the fans are out here, are changing up how you play. You're not doing what we've taught you to do. What were your thoughts on that, especially given what we've seen in the past couple of years? And I guess, does that change how you interpret Saturday's closed scrimmage?
No, I saw that clip, and I agree with him 100%. A team's maturity is, it doesn't matter where you do it or who you do it in front of it. The process should never change. Your fundamentals, the way you go about things, the way you practice, the way you treat your teammates, the way you just go about your business, it doesn't matter if it's in front of nobody or 5,000 people watching a scrimmage in shorts on a Saturday night. That's just, again, that's learning how to win and just being mature and understanding your process, approaching it the same every day, just trying to get a little bit better. Don't have to do anything different. Don't have to do anything crazy every day. It's just approach it with the same amount of energy, the same amount of focus, and you just got to get that 1% better. No, I don't think because of that instance last weekend in that scrimmage with that clip you showed, that I don't think it's why they didn't have fans there. You got to control it, right? Because get clips out, you start getting things of what they're doing offensively, defensively, new wrinkles that they're doing, offensively, defensively, special teams. Like you don't want that stuff getting out. People have phones everywhere. It's we were in college. You didn't have camera phones weren't available, right? I mean, everyone has a video camera in their pocket now, so you can take clips. So you got to protect what you're trying to get established during fall camp, and you don't want that stuff getting out. So it's a little bit of that, a little bit of controlling the narrative, and just really having your team. You want your team to get there and focus. You want to get your work done, and then maybe have another open scrimmage here a week or two again before the game. But I doubt they will. But no, you want to protect your team right now when you're trying to get ready for the season, the first game.
Jay, did crowd size or who was at practice? Did you see it affect teammates? Did it affect you ever? Did you ever try and do too much?
No, I think the only time it ever really affect necessarily practice was practice. I think the only time things would maybe change a little bit, because I can't remember what day of the week the NFL scouts would show up to practice. I can't remember if that was a Tuesday or a Wednesday type of practice, but they would show up rather early, and guys would take it up a notch. And good, that's good, right? You want to show the NFL scouts what you're made of, and just give them something, because they're only there for maybe 20 minutes of practice and they get out of Dodge. But that's one time. Other than that, I think the teams I were on, I'd like to think we were rather mature, and in the outside factors didn't matter too much. Game wise, playing at home, man, there was a different type of energy. That was one of the best experiences that I've had. I've played in NFL stadiums, and the energy of Memorial Stadium on Saturdays hasn't been matched anywhere else I've been. Now, I didn't play at every stadium and had a long career, but the ones I did, it couldn't be matched. So they just got to learn, right, and handle their business the right way. And I think Rhule's message just in that clip was right. It was spot on. That doesn't matter who, what, when, where. You got to control what you can control, and if there's a certain process to go about doing things, and until you can do that right every day, you're not going to win football games. You're going to have the same mistakes they had in the past, was turnovers, penalties, sloppiness, just miscommunication. You have to do those little things right to get to the end goal. So that was nice to see that message being displayed and portrayed, and in front of fans, and stop practice to get that message across to those guys, because it's obviously very important.
Jay, as you talk about the different energy that comes with playing in front of 90,000 or even playing in front of 45, 50,000 on the road, I want to get your thoughts on the left tackle position. Turner Corcoran, Gunnar Gatula. Corcoran's got the 30 starts. It's been up and down, a lot more down than up, but that's how you define his Husker career, kind of been jolted around. As for Gatula, second-year guy, redshirt freshman in the program, Matt Rhule said after practice on Saturday that he he's got the ability. It's all about building the confidence. And I want to get your thoughts, the impact of 30 starts on Corcoran as compared to the young gun in Gatula, because the only way to really build confidence is to get out there and do things, in my opinion. Either that's against your one defense or that's against another team wearing a different color on Saturdays. What is the impact in your eyes of the 30 starts of Corcoran in that battle for the left tackle spot?
Well, it's interesting. It's terrible news about Teddy. The guy just has, the injuries he's had in the last couple years is just, it's a lot, right? And I hope he's able to battle back and get through it. Dealing with knee issues and shoulder issues is never great, but that's football. Next man up, right? As ruthless as it sounds, that's just the job. That's just what athletics are, and especially in football, it's one guy gets hurt, who's going to step up and fill in his spot. But yeah, with Turner, he's played multiple positions, guard, tackle. I think they're hopefully maybe looking at him playing guard predominantly this year if Teddy could have stayed healthy. But in that case, though, he's a guy that can play multiple spots, whether it's been good or bad. He's a guy that you can rely on. He's a guy that who's played well when it matters. Maybe has some some dark spot. Just not playing well at times. Confidence issues. I don't know if that's the right term, for lack of a better term, but he's a guy you can definitely rely on. Has been there, right? Played in front of 90,000 Memorial Stadium or 80,000 at Michigan State, whatever it is, right? He's been there and he's done that. But with the young guys, like a Gatula, who obviously a Lincoln kid, young, and he has energetic, but again, hasn't had the ton of the experience. He's played, but I think I'll take a guy, even though Turner's had some injury issues as well. But you want a guy that has been in there, right? I always call them live bullet reps, man, because it's different. Doing one thing in practice, but doing it against another opponent in front of 90,000, it's completely different. So I think that's going to help Turner's situation, but it's nice to have a guy like Gatula behind him in developing depth, because you're going to need him. There's going to be times where guys get banged up. Probably a time where Bryce Benhart gets banged up and maybe Turner flops to the other side, or Gatula comes in there and steps in. So you just never know. That's the nice thing about how they got it kind of going, that guys can play multiple positions, and I think that's what they want. It's kind of an NFL lineman aspect too, because you only suit up so many guys in the NFL roster, so you got to kind of be able to do multiple things. So I wish Teddy didn't get hurt, but this is a situation we're dealing with. I think Turner's more than capable, obviously, to step in and play. He just stay healthy. But the nice thing is you got young, healthy guys behind him that haven't had a ton of reps yet, but I think are more than capable to step in and fill in and not have too big of a drop-off.
Jay Moore, a few more minutes with us. It's Hail Varsity Radio, Blackshirt Husker NFLer, co-host Big Red Wrap-Up at JMoore44 on Twitter. It's where you can follow him. Our Blackshirt Hour continues, and want to stay with Turner Corcoran. And to me, it is about confidence, and I'm not in his head. That being said, there's natural ability. There's a lot of scouting that went into him in the recruiting process. And then, the time is now for Turner. And Jay, speak to what confidence does do on the field, because it's not always been fair to him, but he's always tried to answer it the right way.
Yeah, I think confidence, my favorite saying ever just in life, it's confidence is like money, hard to get, easy to lose.
Okay.
So there's a process of building confidence. It has to start in practice, and you got to do it the right way in practice. And then once you do it in practice, the games kind of validate, right? So it's like, oh, I do it well in practice. I practice the right way, and then I go and play well in the game. So that just validated my process of doing things and getting confidence the right way. So I'm going to continue to do that right in practice, so I can continue to do it right in the games. So it's just not as easy as, but there's that process everyone has to go through and develop that, and it's not everyone gets to that point differently. Some people get it early on, some people get it later. Just depends on whatever situation they're kind of put into, or maybe they're asked to play out of position because of injuries, so on and so forth. But no, I think he has plenty of confidence, and I think the staff has plenty of confidence in him as well. I'm I'm not concerned whatsoever. I think he's going to step in, and like I said, he's played a ton of football. And when the bell is called, and the bell's rang, he's going to show up. He's going to play. Whether he has confidence issues or not, I don't know if he does. I think everybody has demons, right? The mistakes you've made. I can think of all the bad plays I've made more than probably the good ones, right? It just every athlete has that, but sometimes that can benefit a guy too. That can give you motivation to get better and to improve, to make sure those bad situations don't happen again. So I think he's going to answer the bell, and like I said, with the other guys around him and Coach Raiola, they're going to have him ready, and I think they're going to be good to go. I think this offensive line is finally one of the strengths of this offense and this team. As long as everyone continues to stay healthy and get better, and they run the football, take care of the football, protect Raiola, and utilize their weapons on the edges now that they didn't have last year because of injuries, and that kind of gets confidence to this whole offense going as well, which they haven't had obviously last year at all.
Jay, one of the things I said on Friday I want to get your take on is, as an offensive or defensive lineman, if you're walking up to the line of scrimmage and you see that guy across from you and you think, uh-oh, or you think I'm screwed, you've already been beaten before the snap has even happened. Is that true in your eyes? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, totally. Yeah, absolutely. You got to, if you step up there and as a defensive lineman and you see a guy that's 6'8", you never know, right? I think we watch NFL so different because you might play a teams or division twice a year, or you got to see more guys, right? But in college, there's so many other people that it's changed. The positions change. If you play Kansas, my friends, or whatever, you play Iowa every year, and you might see one guy at tackle and it's a completely different guy the next year. But you see what they do on film, right? And they're like, okay, but you can't, you know what they do and what you see, but you have to really trust it until that first play. So you're kind of not feeling it out, but you're like, okay, what's this? Am I seeing? My eyes seeing? Is it matching what I saw on film that I see in real life? And then once you notice that, and then maybe, oh no, boy, this is different. He's better than what I thought, or no, he's not as, his punch isn't as strong. He's not as strong as the point attack as he made it look, or maybe he wasn't going against the best competition in the games we saw. So you can you got to adjust. I don't think it affects your confidence level by any means, but it's just you got to make adjustments, right? It's like, boy, this guy's pretty damn quick off the ball, or he's in his pass set. It's like, man, I gotta go. I gotta pick it up. I gotta be stronger at the point of attack with him, and I can't be shoved out the hole, and I gotta use my hands better and have better technique. So you can go down that rabbit hole, right, of seeing that. But I think the good players, they don't get too rattled. But I've played against guys. I mean, I remember going against USC and getting ready to play Sam Baker, who was a first-round draft pick. That later that year, I think the Panthers selected him in the first round. I played guys at Texas who were really, really good draft NFL players, and playing against Matt Slauson, NFL, played in the league. Carl Nix, right, who would have been a first-round draft pick, except for some injuries. So, I think those guys make you better, and the good players adjust to other good players, right? And I hope guys adjusted to me, right? Off of what they saw in film. So it's just kind of a unique process that I think everyone has to figure out on their own and in their each and own unique way.
Jay, I'll wrap with this, and always great to spend time with Jay Moore. Who made you better? Pick one guy that, back to Elijah's early question, who'd you hate going against, but who helped sharpen that iron?
Yeah, I think Matt Slauson was the guy that you got to bring it every day against him. I think everybody. I think majority of the guys. But I had to make myself better. It's just that, our Coach K always joked, in our workouts and everything like that. There's always that devil in the back of your head, right? That's telling you can't do this. You can't. That's kind of, you got to go to battle with that guy too every day. And he would always be at practice or working out, and he'd always be like, ring, the devil's here, just trying to get guys, mentally to see where they're at. And first and foremost, you had to go to battle with that guy every day and defeat him. But but no, just Slauson, Carl Nix, Chris Patrick, Lyden Murtha, Seppo Avari, just all sorts of guys on the offensive line and that I had to go to battle with. But Slauson and I did, it was every day. I mean, we did Oklahoma drill every single day in pads my junior and senior year. And I was against him, and it was just running into each other. It was terrible. It sucked. We hated doing it, but it made you better. You didn't like getting your ass kicked, so you made damn sure that you played with proper pad level, hand placement, footwork, all that stuff, because if you weren't, you're going to get embarrassed. So just things like that, and just putting you in those situations, uncomfortable situations that you eventually get comfortable with, because that's life and that's football, being uncomfortable, being comfortable being uncomfortable. So I had a lot of good players. I was very fortunate to just crazy looking back how good our offensive line was at Nebraska. Lyden Murtha played in the NFL, Chris Patrick played in the NFL, Slauson played for a while, Carl Nix played for a while. So that made me better right there. Those handful of guys had to go against them every day in practice. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You get a break on Friday and Saturday, right? You get against another opponent, but right back at it again on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday the following week. So it was tough at the time, but honestly, looking back at it, it was a great blessing.
Jay, we'll holler next week, closer to kickoff. Always appreciate it, man.
Yep, thanks, boys.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time on a Monday with Hail Varsity. Big thanks to Coach McBride. Big thanks to Jay Moore. And Tim Verghese, Inside Nebraska. Today's show, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Get the podcast. Download it, like, and subscribe. And be sure to give us a review, good, bad, or ugly. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Hail Varsity YouTube, at Varsity Radio. Follow the show on Twitter. Tomorrow, it's going to be another big road show for the Schick and Nick podcast as they're doing their annual August Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill appearance. That's coming up next week. We'll talk with Matt Schick of ESPN, Sirius XM, coming up tomorrow. Jeremiah Searles with us. Mitch Sherman also joins the show, so get ready with us for Tuesday. And we'll have some thoughts from Mr. Tony, Coach Tony White tomorrow, part of media availability, and maybe a handful of players. So excited about that.
And one other thing to note here, there is also going to be another episode of the Average Joe Sports Show podcast dropping here soon. Not to give ourselves a free shout out.
Recording tonight at 7.
Yeah, and I think I should be able to have that up by late tonight, if not early tomorrow morning.
So some Tuesday morning listening and viewing.
Yeah, as fall camp ramps up, there is great listening stuff ramping up for you as well. As if we count today as done, which most people out there are done with their workday. We're almost there, Schmitty. Be 18 days? 18 days till opening kickoff? Man.
18 days till we are locked up at the old Single Barrel inside the Graduate for a pregame Saturday. I picture the buzz and excitement and the streets as you're heading downtown to Lincoln or you're heading in from the interstate, like that end scene of Field of Dreams.
It's the pregame is going to be fun. I think the postgame buzz is going to be spectacular, assuming what I think is going to happen.
They do their job.
Assuming they do their job, the postgame buzz will be, I don't know, more buzz than we've had dating back to before I started college. With how many times Nebraska lost the first game, or last time they won their first game was at South Alabama.
Probably.
Where even then it wasn't very convincing. You needed a J.D. Spielman punt return for a touchdown.
Is that 2019?
I think.
I think they won in 2020. No, because they lost at Illinois in 21. COVID was at Ohio State in 20.
22 was the Northwestern debacle.
Oh, yes. It's been 5 years
since they won their first game, yeah. And even then, that South Alabama game, you needed heroics from J.D. Spielman, and I think it was a pick six from Eric Lee.
Was it Lee?
I think it was Eric Lee, and you won by 2 touchdowns. Yeah. So the last time Nebraska had a convincing Week 1 performance
You'll be able to
that
have
led
a
to buzz,
whiskey. You'll be able to have a whiskey at the Single Barrel out of joy.
I don't want
not necessity.
I don't want to put like anything past this team because I too have watched the past decade and I know how things have gone against some of these lower level teams. UTEP's in year 1, Nebraska's in year 2 with a boatload of additional talent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that game, assuming Nebraska does their job, will be a cause for celebration.
Chuck is wondering about an Iowa quarterback controversy. Yeah, I know that McNamara went 7 of 21 for an interception and was garbage on their scrimmage.
Kind of to my point about closing the scrimmage on Saturday, does that speak more to how bad Iowa's offense is or how great their defense is?
I would go with the Hawkeye defense being incredible.